Hey, this is attorney Elizabeth Potts-Weinstein. Today we're going to be talking about how to hire yourself as an employee of your S corporation in California. And this video is specifically about people in California, about businesses in California, and I'm going to be talking about hiring yourself as an employee of your S corporation. So if you have created an LLC that you've decided to have it be taxed as an S Corp, or a corporation that you decided to have it be taxed as an S Corp, you are going to need to hire yourself as an employee to be able to pay yourself. You can't pay yourself everything just as a distribution of profits. You have to also hire yourself as an employee and pay yourself as an officer or whatever title you want to have for yourself as the owner employee of this business, where you run a regular payroll and actually pay yourself just like you would if you were an employee somewhere else. And the reason you have to do that is for tax purposes. The IRS requires that, so that way you're paying all the kind of things you used to do with self-employment tax. So all the FICAs and Social Securities and all that kind of stuff. Now, the first thing you need to do is have an S corporation, which can be an LLC taxed as an S corporation or a corporation taxed as an S corporation. So that has to be set up first. You can't have a sole proprietorship tax as an S corporation. So if that's what you have, a sole proprietorship, you have to first form the LLC or corporation and then elect to have it taxed as an S Corp. And I have videos, and I'll link up here, down there, about how you do that paperwork. The next thing you're going to do, if you haven't done this already, which you probably will have already done this, but is make sure you have an EIN, an employer identification number, for that LLC or corporation. You're going to need that anyway, and you'll need it to actually file the S Corp election. So I'm assuming that you did that when you set up the business originally, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page, that you get the EIN from the IRS, the federal EIN, before you do any other steps. So as I said, you're going to need to be running payroll. So you're going to need a payroll provider. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can go about this. One is your bookkeeper, accountant, tax preparer, whatever. They could do this for you. They could be the payroll provider. Another way you could go about it is to hire a service. I'm actually going to do a video in the future that's going to have all kinds of different payroll providers, and I'm going to look over all of them and explain which ones are appropriate in which situations. I personally use Gusto. I think Gusto is a great choice for a lot of small businesses. However, there are other ones out there, and I'm going to be doing a review video in the future going through all these different ones. But fundamentally, you don't want to be doing the payroll stuff yourself. I really don't think you should. I don't do it myself because, man, it is so easy to screw up. There are so many filings you have to do. Filings with the state, filings with the federal government. You have to do filings every time with the different schedules and months and quarterly ones and annual ones and all these different things. And then the schedule changes. And I tried to do it myself when I first started my first business because all these online payroll providers didn't exist back then. And I was constantly messing it up and getting letters from the state or getting letters from the IRS telling me I did it wrong. And I'm a lawyer. Okay, I'm a lawyer. It was just, and I was using QuickBooks to do all the calculations. I was still messed up all the time. And I didn't have to pay horrible fines, or I didn't get super big trouble, but it was still wrong. Once I hired a payroll provider to handle it for me, I'm not saying they're always perfect. They don't ever mess anything up, because sometimes they do and then they have to fix it, but they're fixing it then. They're fixing it then. And most of the time they don't. And most of the time Gusto hasn't messed things up. So generally speaking, I think it totally makes sense to hire this out. So you're going to need to decide what payroll provider you want. And the first decision is, you're going to pay a person or are you going to hire a service? I personally really like working with a service, and I use Gusto, as I said before. And the reason is that I like going in there and deciding what my payroll is going to be and when I'm going to do it. And I can make changes myself. And I can decide, well, I actually really didn't make that much money this month. It was a really bad month, so I'm going to pay myself less this month. I can make those decisions without having to talk to some person and have it be awkward in that kind of a way. Now, there are some accountants, tax preparers, people like that, who instead of running payroll, paying yourself every week, every 2 weeks, twice a month, once a month, whatever, they have you do payroll once a year. I personally don't recommend that because I think paying yourself on a regular basis is a very disciplined way to make sure that you're paying yourself the right amount of money and the taxes are coming out right, and that you're looking at the finances of your business on a regular basis. And if leaving it to the end of the year, I think is very potentially dangerous thing to do. So I think it's much better to do it on a regular basis. However, there are totally people who do it that way, and they haven't gotten in trouble with the IRS yet, apparently. So it seems like that's an okay thing to do. I think running payroll on a regular basis, even if it's just once a month, which is how I currently run my payroll, is a way to be very, very disciplined about making sure that you pay yourself, making sure all the taxes are taken out, and really looking at the finances of your business on a regular basis. So let's assume you selected that payroll provider. Now, a lot of times at this point, you can go ahead and like sign up with them or however it works to get on board with them as your payroll provider. But they're going to need a couple of things for you. A lot of stuff they're going to do for you completely. Sometimes they will do everything for you, but a lot of times they're going to need you to do a few things first. And what they're probably going to need from you is to register as an employer. So in California, you register with the EDD, so it's edd.ca.gov. You go there to register as an employer and you get a number from them that is your employer tax account number. And you're going to need to give that to your payroll provider. And so that's something that you'll need to do on your end. And then as employees get hired, then they'll go ahead and file the paperwork for the employees, including you as the employee. You sometimes have to also register with the city. Some cities don't have any employment taxes, but some do. So you'll have to look at the city and see if you need to register. And now a lot of times the payroll provider will tell you you need to do that. So you'll give the address for where your location is, which could be your house if you're working from home or your office. And then they'll tell you, oh, actually in this city, there is a employment tax. And so you need to register as an employer there. So, and then the reason they'll tell you that is because they need the numbers so they can do the filing. That's one of the reasons I recommend to start out with a payroll provider, because you need to see, are they going to do these things for you or do they need you to do them? And then they'll tell you what things they need you to do. And they're like, we need this number, this number, this number. And then they'll give you the link and you go off and do it. Or they'll say, oh, actually we're full service and we do all that stuff for you. So you have to find out from them. So how do you actually pay yourself? And the big issue here is that how do you figure out what the salary should be for you? Now, the rule is with the IRS that you have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. What does that mean? No one actually knows when it really comes down to it, because that's incredibly vague. What is reasonable? It's reasonable for your job, for the role that you have in the business. And I mean the work that you do. So like there's some of the work that you do in the business that's actually not in the business, it's on the business. It's you as the owner. And there's some work that's like you just doing the things, you making the things, you provide the services, whatever. That's like a job that you have in the business versus you as the owner when you're thinking about like big picture planning things for the business. That may be just you as the owner. So you doing the job, what is the reasonable salary for the job part of that business? But that has to be balanced with how much money the business actually makes. So for example, let's say you have a business that makes $300,000 a year profit, $300,000 a year profit. Well, you can't argue that you should be only paying yourself a salary of 10 grand because you know what? You made 300 grand. You can't have your salary. No one works for 10 grand full time. Like that's like not legal. It's not minimum wage even. So you have to have a reasonableness for how much is the salary versus the profit that you just pay yourself as a distribution. In that case, let's say the job that you're doing, if you had to hire someone else, you would pay them 100 grand a year. So you pay yourself 100 grand a year and the other 200 grand you take as a profit distribution. That would be one example. And then you would want an argument. You would have some like evidence that you get from somewhere that shows that 100 grand is reasonable. On the other hand, let's say this business makes $10,000 as profit. Well, normally I would say $10,000 is not a reasonable salary to pay anybody. But if that's all you got, then that's all you got. If it only made $10,000 last year, then it's totally fine that you only pay yourself $10,000. No one expects you to pay yourself more than the business makes. That is reasonable. And you totally have that argument. So you see what I'm saying there? So it really does depend on how much your business makes, as well as what the job should get paid if you had to hire a stranger to do it. And so what I like to do is look at it from like almost like a sliding scale that, okay, so if I had all the money in the world, I'd have to pay someone whatever, 50 grand, 100 grand, some amount of money, $35,000 a year. It depends on what it is. And are you working full time? And how much would you pay someone to do that job? And then you scale down them from there if your business doesn't make that much money. And then if your business makes more money than that, then that's just profit distribution. Now, I highly recommend that you come up with a schedule. And it's something that you revisit on a regular basis when on your payroll schedule to decide how much to pay yourself based on your profits in your business. And kind of on that sliding scale. So let's say you're thinking, okay, I'm going to pay myself 50 grand a year. That's a very reasonable salary for this job in this location that I do in my business. But I don't actually make enough each month right now to pay myself that. So let's say you want to run payroll every week or every other week or every month. Let's just say every month. Then at the end of the month, when you're getting ready to run the payroll, you look, oh, how much money did I make last month? Did I make enough to pay myself the 1/12 of $50,000 or not? And if you didn't, then you pay yourself a reasonable amount. You pay that the reasonable amount is how much money that is. But if you made way more than that, then you can pay yourself that 1/12 of $50,000. I can't do that math in my head. And then you could do another distribution if it makes sense in that situation. Or you could just leave the money in there and let it go from month to month and use it for research and development or buying new things in your business or whatever makes sense for you. And I think that's really the one of the biggest takeaways I want you to think about when you're calculating out how the payroll is going to work is that it's very important to have a schedule. I think it's very important to have a regular schedule, but the amounts of money can be different if that's all that you have. So you're not forced to pay out extra for your business just because you happen to have an S corporation. Again, this is attorney Elizabeth Potts-Weinstein. If you have any questions about what we talked about today, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I'll try to point you in the right direction. Thumbs up if you found this video helpful, subscribe for more videos like this. And if you have any more questions or would like more connection, you can join the free Discord or sign up for the Patreon. Links are below. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye-bye.